Hi guys, this is James from Cannabis Place. Today we're going to be covering the differences between hemp and marijuana. We're going to try and make this video short, just within 5 or 7 minutes. We'll be leaving links down in the description just in case you want to look a little bit deeper into the topic. And we're going to break down a few points such as how is hemp legal while marijuana is illegal? Does hemp and marijuana come from the same plant? Does CBD come from hemp or marijuana? And so on. So in Australia, walking down to the Sunday markets, you will see hemp bags, shirts, creams and oils, but you won't actually see marijuana openly sold. And what's really interesting here is hemp and marijuana. They actually come from the cannabis plant family. So with the cannabis plant family, we have the sativa, we have the indica, and we have the ruderalis. And you will notice that within the three species that are under the cannabis family, you won't actually notice any like cannabis marijuana or cannabis hemp, which is pretty interesting. So we'll break down hemp, then we'll break down marijuana, and then we should have a clearer picture and we'll give you a little summary at the end. So just going down here, we can see a little picture of the Australia's hemp farms, which is pretty cool, as we're going into legalization of cannabis in some areas, mainly for medicinal use, and hemp is definitely becoming more mainstream. So hemp itself is considered a non-intoxicating cannabis that is cultivated and harvested for materials and ingredients. And hemp is internationally recognized as a form of cannabis that has 0.3% or less of THC content. THC content, just a little backstory, we'll go through it a little bit more later on. It's basically the chemical compound that gets people high. It's intoxicating. So the legal definitions of hemp vary, but the general international standard, especially in Australia, is 0.03% of THC content, and it's measured by dry weight. Then it is defined as hemp. Now, backstory: hemp has been with us for a long time. They say up to 10,000 years ago, and has been a crucial part of mankind's agricultural history, which is pretty cool. The way they kind of define that, as much as I read into, they found a lot of, they dug up a lot of old bodies, and there was trace fabrics and so on that we used to have, or our ancestors did, and the materials were actually hemp. So that's pretty cool. Nowadays, 2019, we're using hemp for more than just clothes. We're using it for beer, sunscreen, oils, clothes, soap, even concrete for building materials. And there's a big innovation in hemp batteries, and might be used for cars and smartphones in the near future, which is pretty interesting. Now, just for marijuana here, we got the plant here. This is actually Australia's commercial cannabis medical farms. And marijuana, very similar to hemp, it's part of the cannabis family, of course. It's a relatively new term used to identify forms of cannabis that contains more than 0.3% of THC. So hemp was 0.3% or less, marijuana is 0.3% or more. And THC, and I'd always have trouble pronouncing this, the tetrahydrocannabinol, is a chemical compound responsible for marijuana's psychological effects. So this is what gets people high. It's kind of like a drunk feeling. And the THC acts like a cannabinoid chemical that's made naturally by the body, which is pretty interesting. So a lot of people don't realize that. The cannabinoid receptors are receptors areas in our brain, and the way it's affected, those parts are associated with thinking, memory, pleasure, coordination, time perception. And these are the parts of where it affects, and this is where it gives you that psychological high. So the word marijuana itself as well, just a little bit of a backstory, is originated from North America, and it's born between the Mexican and US cultures. So in the early 1900s, there was a Mexican revolution. A lot of Mexican immigrants went up to the US, and a part of their culture was smoking marijuana, and a lot of hemp products were made. In the US at that time, a lot of people were against it, but they weren't they weren't really sure what it was. So shortly after, the American government started putting in bills to ban and make marijuana illegal. There was a lot of different terms. Reefer madness was a big one, but the anti-marijuana laws put in place actually solidified marijuana as the standard name. All the media picked it up and said anti-marijuana, so everyone referred to it as marijuana. And soon after, all the other Western countries, Europe, Australia, New Zealand, everyone else picked up on it. And there's a lot of confusion between hemp and marijuana. So they are not a species of cannabis per se. So we talked before about there being the indica, the sativa, the ruderalis. These are the three species of cannabis. And within those three species, hemp and marijuana falls within. So like we were saying before, the simple way of looking at it, hemp has a THC content of 0.3% or less, and marijuana has a THC content of 0.3% or more. Now, just here is a visualization of the ruderalis over here on the right, of the plant itself. We got the indica, and we got the sativa, and then we got the leaves over here. So you can see they have a lot of similarities, but also very different. What we'll also notice is that the hemp and marijuana can actually fall into any of these. So you could have a sativa plant that's both for hemp and marijuana, and it's basically how they're grown, and there might be certain strains which are stronger for hemp and don't contain that much THC content. And the biggest misconception is that classifying hemp and marijuana plants just based on THC content is the same as classifying like all fruit by being sweet or sour. And the last part I'll leave you with for this video is just how they harvest hemp and marijuana. It's a little different even from the same plants. So hemp is harvested from the seeds, which is then used for food ingredients, oils, creams, and they make flour from it, or you can just buy the seeds themselves. From 2016 in Australia, hemp seeds, as long as it's not a strong psychoactive agent, is available to buy for food ingredients. And for the materials such as paper, what they use for clothes, what they use for like building materials like concrete, stuff like that, they harvest it from the stalk itself. Now for marijuana, they don't harvest the leaves often, or the stalk, or the seeds, aside from using the seeds to actually grow the plants. What they harvest is the flower. So as you see here in this picture, they will harvest this part because it's got the strongest concentration of THC. You won't find people harvesting THC or any of the marijuana components from leaves very often, more so just the flower itself. So they extract that, and then what they do is they dry it, and once it's dry, and then they'll start to run the medical test, making sure it's pure, and then they'll figure out the concentration of THC in each amount or each plant that they have, and they'll figure out what medical applications they will be used for. Alright, perfect. Thank you very much for listening, and look forward to the next video.